Oh look, here come the goats. They have seen me and they are on their way. I'm telling you, if you want an animal that is curious and will constantly be right in the middle of whatever you're doing, goats are definitely for you. Aren't you? Aren't you? You guys got to know what's going on. Doesn't matter what's happening. You got to be there. Hi everyone, I'm Andrew, and this is Plainview Farm, where we raise beef cattle, meat goats, a handful of pigs, a few chickens, and a few donkeys. And we also try to grow a few vegetables in the summertime. Now we do all of this on only 20 acres, which leads people to ask me the question from time to time, do you farm full-time and earn a living off of your 20 acres? Well, the answer to that question is no, but it doesn't mean that you can't. It seems like over the last few years, there's been a strong urge for people to get away from the busy life, whether it's in the city or the suburbs, and move out to the country and live a more sustainable, self-sufficient lifestyle. Now, believe me, I can fully understand this desire because honestly, it's something that I've felt myself. Even though I did grow up on a farm, there was a short amount of time that I lived in town and I couldn't wait to get back out into the country. So as I said, even though I'm not currently earning a living on my small scale farm, I'm going to explain to you how you can get there and as well explain why I'm not. Now, the first thing we need to do is actually define what small scale farming is. So small scale farming means that you are working on small or limited acreage, usually somewhere between a half acre or less, I guess in some cases, up to maybe 40 acres. And I know some of you may be saying 40 acres, how is that small scale? Well, the average size of a farm in the United States is somewhere around 450 acres. So 10% of that I would consider definitely to be small scale. So anyway, small scale farming means taking that limited resource that you have and trying to work smart so that you can maximize its potential. That means that you are packing your crops or your vegetables into small, tight rows, or perhaps if you're raising livestock, you are stacking all of those enterprises on top of one another, which is what I do here. Now, if we're going to talk about a small scale homestead, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to make a living on a small scale homestead because a farm usually is producing something that you sell, where a homestead is producing something that you consume or you use to sustain your own existence. Now, if I were to put a label on us, even though we call ourselves Plainview Farm, I would say that we're probably more of a farmstead. Now, a farmstead is kind of combining the two, where you are producing something for sale to try to gain some income, and you are also trying to grow something for your own consumption. So naturally, the largest barrier to entry is going to be land cost, which is why a lot of people are looking at small scale agriculture. Land is expensive, and as they say, they're not making any more of it. Depending on where you're located, land costs can vary between a couple $1,000s an acre to $10,000 or $15,000 per acre. In some cases, even more. A lot of the times, the lower cost acreage is going to be remote. There probably aren't going to be utilities available on that acreage, meaning that there's no electric service nearby, or if there is electric service nearby, it's going to cost a lot of money to get it onto the property. There also may not be access to any kind of water source. You may have to drill a well, which that can add up to tens of thousands of dollars, depending again on your location. Now, here where I live in southern Missouri is actually one of the places where land prices were somewhat low compared to the rest of the country. Of course, like a lot of other places, prices have really started to come up over the last few years. And usually those remote areas where prices are low means that there is fewer access to markets or opportunities to sell your products. Cheap land is usually cheap for a reason. And the opposite of that is very true as well. Expensive land is usually expensive for a reason, meaning that it's generally in a desirable location and it's very well developed. So if you're expecting to jump into what we would call a turnkey operation, you're probably going to be paying a premium for that. Then on top of the land costs, as I said, you've got costs for utilities, you've got costs for permits and those kinds of things, again, depending on location. If you're looking to build new structures or improve infrastructure, you have insurance costs as well as taxes, and frankly, any number of things that you can think of, they're probably out there waiting to sneak up on you. That's why it's very important to do a lot of research whenever you're looking at a piece of property. You need to make sure you know the true cost of what it is that you're wanting to buy. And something else that factors into that true cost is, as I said before, access to the marketplace. Again, one of the reasons that it's difficult for me to make a living on my 20 acres is because I don't have a whole lot of marketplace access. I happen to live in a very rural part of the country. The closest town to me is about 12,000 people, and that is the largest town in about a 100-mile radius. There's just not a lot of people around here. So if you're looking to build a farm that is going to support you financially, you need to do some research and figure out what kind of market is nearby and if it's something that can actually support what you're planning to grow. Now, the reason I'm living where I'm living is because this is where my family is and this is where I want to be. But if you're open to moving anywhere in the country, then by all means, start looking at marketplaces. Try to find areas where there are gaps in the marketplace, especially gaps that you think you can fill. And honestly, if you're looking to grow quickly, one of the best things that you can do is put the idea of buying a farm out of your mind, at least in the short term, and look for a place to rent. Usually you can rent a farm much, much cheaper than you can buy one. Renting a piece of property will allow you to grow at a much slower pace because there's not a whole lot of pressure to make that mortgage payment. Now, if you're the kind of person who already has a home that you own free and clear in the city or the subdivision, or even have a lot of equity in, then you may look at things a little bit different than those of us who are basically starting from scratch. But even with that being said, it probably doesn't hurt to look at properties to rent, at least for a little while, to kind of get your toe wet. Now, if you're looking to create a full-time income on a small-scale farm, one of the things you have to do very quickly is to get it through your mind that you're probably not going to make a very large salary, especially not at first. Before you quit your day job, you better have a pretty good handle on what you're doing, and you better have a pretty good income source, steady income source coming in. Not only that, it's not a bad idea to build up a little bit of savings to go along with it. All my life, I've heard people say that some of the biggest gamblers in the world are actually farmers. You honestly never know when weather or pests or who knows what is going to come in and wipe out an entire season's worth of work. So what you have to do is set goals and work in stages. Try to progress from one thing to the next slowly. And I cannot emphasize that enough. You have to grow slowly. If you try to do everything all at once, you are just setting yourself up for a much harder fall whenever those difficult times do come. And I think this would be a good time to throw in there as well that debt is most likely not your friend. And you're probably asking yourself the question right now, well then, how do we make any of this work if we shouldn't borrow any money? Well, I'm not saying that you shouldn't borrow any money, but don't borrow money unless you absolutely have to. Debt service payments are the #1 contributor to financial pressure in the average American home. So like I said, try to avoid debt and learn terms like shoestring budget and bootstrap. Challenge yourself to see just how much you can do without spending money. Now again, as I said before, here on our 20-acre livestock farm, we have multiple enterprises stacked on one another. Again, we raise beef cattle, we raise meat goats, we have pigs, we have chickens, and we also have some donkeys as well. Now, every enterprise on our farm is a direct-to-consumer enterprise, with the exception of the goats. The goats we sell at a local livestock auction because we don't have a local goat meat market. The chickens that we raise are egg-laying chickens, and we sell those eggs at the local farmers market as well as to our family and friends. Our cattle are, well, I guess they go by a few different names depending on who you talk to. They are referred to as lowline Angus, Australian lowlines, American Aberdeens, Australian Aberdeens, or Aberdeens. There's a few different names, like I said, that they go by. But that's not really the point of what I'm getting to here. These cattle are actually small-scale cattle for a small-scale farm. They are roughly 2/3 the size of a conventional cow. That means that we can have more cattle on less acreage. And we raise these cattle to sell by the individual cut at the farmer's market, as well as wholes and halves to individuals delivered to the processor. Now, what we're trying to do here is to fill a bit of a niche market in that the smaller cattle leads to a lower price point if somebody is wanting to buy a whole or a half a beef. Now, our pigs are a similar story. We raise them to sell to individuals as feeder pigs or as market hogs to be processed by either the whole or the half. We also sell individual cuts at the local farmers market as well. Now, obviously, the donkeys do not provide any kind of consumable product. The donkeys are for the protection of the other animals. We have a Jack and a Jenny. I'm not going to go chase them down to try to get them on camera right now. But we've got a Jack and a Jenny, and their purpose is to watch out for predators, coyotes, dogs, those kinds of things, and keep them from harming the livestock. But even though they don't produce a consumable product, having a Jack and a Jenny, that gives us a colt every once in a while that we will sell. One of our goals, and I believe it should be a goal for anyone who's looking to make a living on a small scale farm, is to make everything contribute to the farm in some way or another financially. Just like the old saying goes, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. If you're going to find success on a small scale farm, you have to be diverse. That means you are looking for as many income streams as possible. And anytime I do one of these financial videos, it seems like there's always someone in the comments who says, oh yeah, and start a YouTube channel. You know what? If it helps you to pay the bills, absolutely. Start a YouTube channel. Start some kind of social media presence. Do whatever it takes. If your goal is to earn a living doing what you love, doing what you want to do, if making a YouTube channel helps with that and making YouTube videos helps to provide an income, absolutely do that. Don't let yourself get bogged down by the gatekeepers or whoever it may be that tries to tell you what a real farmer is or is not. Honestly, if you're someone who's making a living on a small scale farm while somebody with 600 acres is having to work a full-time job to support all of their debt payments, then you know what? I think you're probably closer to a real farmer than they are. I'm sorry, I'll get off my soapbox and get back to the topic at hand. And as I said before, I'm trying to develop a niche market with my cattle. There's absolutely nothing wrong with niche markets. I met a guy one time who is a market gardener who I think his whole piece of property was like 5 acres, and he made a living off of that 5 acres raising vegetables to sell at the local farmers market. And he told me that his most profitable vegetable was lettuce. He grew lettuce year-round in high tunnels, and he said it almost seemed as if he couldn't grow enough of it. His entire business was built around trying to find products that were easy to grow and made a large profit. He said that while most market gardeners were getting all excited about tomatoes, he really didn't put a whole lot of energy into them because he didn't make a lot of money off of them. So look to sell products that are not only desirable, but also profitable. Just because something is desirable doesn't mean that you're going to make a lot of money on it, which, as he said, was the exact case with tomatoes. Value-added products are definitely an income source that shouldn't be overlooked on small-scale farms and homesteads. Jams, jellies, soaps, handmade items, whatever, they all help contribute to the bottom line, which ultimately is the goal here. If you can create or make something from what you're already doing on your farm that is profitable, do it, sell it. Again, add to that bottom line to help make yourself financially independent. Now, one of the things people don't like to talk about a lot when visiting about this subject is lifestyle changes. If you want to make a living on the farm, then you probably need to stay on the farm. You need to learn how to cook from scratch. You need to learn how to work on your own equipment. You need to learn how to build your own infrastructure. You need to learn how to do as much for yourself as you can. While it's important to make sure that you are not burning yourself out, it's also important to make sure that you are utilizing all of your skills. Try to avoid buying things that aren't absolutely necessary, and try to avoid going out and spending money, again, unless it is absolutely necessary. You're probably not going to drive newer cars. You're probably not going to have a lot of the new latest tech equipment. You're probably going to have to cancel certain TV package subscriptions or Amazon subscriptions, whatever it might be, in order to reduce your financial obligations every month. Because again, it's not just about trying to produce income, it's also about trying to reduce liabilities. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention here is probably the most important, and that is planning cannot be overlooked. Make sure that you have a good plan and that you follow it. Not only should you be setting long-term goals, but you should be setting short-term and intermediate goals to help you reach the long-term goals. If you try to just jump in and fly by the seat of your pants, you're only setting yourself up for failure. And if something isn't working out the way that you thought it would, you need to back up and adjust or go a different direction altogether. Now, the goal of this video is not meant to cover absolutely every possible topic and every nook and cranny of this subject. It's really meant to just get you thinking about what might be possible for you. At the end of the day, you've got to be the one to do the research. You've got to be the one to do the hard work and to actually dig down and figure out what actually is possible. You have to be sure to properly assess all of your opportunities, all of your risks, all of your financial commitments, and understand, again, at the end of the day, it's not entirely about money. It's also about the kind of life that you want to live, that you want to lead with your family. Being a full-time farmer on a small scale may sound great, but honestly, it may not be the lifestyle you're looking for. But then again, it may be exactly the lifestyle that you're looking for. So if you found this video to be helpful, I would appreciate it if you do me a favor and hit that like button, share it with other folks, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. As always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.